What's going on, everybody? So front wheel's a little bit tricky, mostly because we're going to start getting to know some plane tricks, some circular patterns, and at the end of the day, it's really the specifics of this design that really can get students caught up. So some things that I want to point out, right? There are we got an overall dimension of about 35 millimeters. We know that we're going to have a 3 millimeter dimension for the axle, the same way as the other axle. And we also have some spokes, is how I'll refer to them. There's 5 spokes. And initially, it seems like these are all drawn on the same exact idea, but these are actually 1 millimeter off. And we can see that in the hidden lines. It's a little bit tricky how the depth is shown here, but I think it's important to point that out. The other piece is that just like the back wheel, we're going to have a cap, right? We don't want this to be a through hole. So let's see, we got a 35 millimeter dimension to a 25. So we have 10 millimeter thickness there. And then this 12 millimeter one is going to probably be our most important thing. So let's jump into Fusion and see how this works. So if I turn my axle back on, really, because I'm not doing this with Revolve, I will want to ensure my tire works by drawing on the front. I'm going to turn that back off, but I just wanted to kind of make things make sense, right? So to me, I believe it makes the most sense to start with our biggest diameter. I'm going to use the shortcut C to get to our second largest, which is 25. I'm going to use the shortcut C to bring out 12 millimeters, and then I'm going to follow up with one more at 4 millimeters, okay? And all of these concentric circles may look confusing, but if you look at the drawing, 35, 25, 12, 4, right? The only one I'm not doing is that 3, and it'll make sense in a moment. All right, so how thick is this, right? If you look, we have a 5 millimeter thickness. So I am going to pop out this piece and this piece only for right now, and we're going to do 5 millimeters. Let me look at this isometrically so you see exactly what I'm talking about. So basically, the really tricky part about this wheel is the fact that we're going to need to draw 1 millimeter inside this, right? So if we think about the sketch plans we have, if we write -1 millimeter, now we're drawing inside without actually needing to cut the part in half. And that's one of the benefits of CAD, right? So we're going to draw this piece right here, and we are going to start working on spokes. All right, so spokes are really going to help us when we draw the for support on our tire, right? So if we look at the drawing itself, there's a few ways to do this. I'm actually going to use a project geometry tool, and that way this piece and this piece are actually going to be connected. I may have to draw a circle later on, but if you look at the drawing dimensions, it's an angle of 35 degrees, and it says it's 5 times. So that means each one of those is going to be 5 different, there's 5 different spokes, and you'll see that every part of this is actually extruded out. Okay, so we have that part, we have that part. So this is the only face that we're actually going to be popping out. So if you go to project or hit the letter P, you can actually project the same exact geometry onto this sketch. So if we hit this, you'll see that I can't actually draw, I can't actually pop this piece out, right? So projection isn't perfectly working. So if I go out here and just draw circles, the same idea is going to work. So I'll have each one of those, same dimensions. Let's check it out, see if it worked. And it does. That's great. All right, so if this didn't work, you wouldn't have the ability to highlight this after your sketch is available, right? So that means that I know that it works. So I'm very confident each of you could go through and draw all 5 of those. However, that's going to make your life a lot harder. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take these 2 exact lines. I'm going to click on them for a second. And I'm going to go to circular pattern. Okay, so circular pattern is a very powerful tool that's going to allow you to click objects as well as center points, right? And I can take anything that I want to and it will duplicate that pattern, right? So instead of us having to redraw this, I can just use math, right, to actually redraw all of those circles. Those lines, right? Now, when I extrude this is where it's a little bit tricky because you have to use the drawing, okay? It says that the hole goes down 1 millimeter. Well, if the whole thing's 5 and there's a millimeter on each side, that means this is going to be a 3 millimeter extrusion, right? So if I hit the letter E and I simply click every other one of those and I have a dimension of 3, it's going to seem like it's a cut. But the second I go to join, and instead of making this positive 3, I go to negative 3, now I get that geometry that I'm really looking for. Okay, so a few more steps here. Essentially, what we're trying to do is we have on the back side, we need a cap of 1 millimeter. And on the front side, we need to extrude this out. I think it's 2 millimeters, but I'm going to check the drawing right there. That's 2 millimeters, right? So right here, I'm going to draw a sketch right on the face of this. And I am going to make this a 3 millimeter circle, right? And I'm going to extrude this out. And instead of doing this in one side, I'm going to make this 2 sides, right? So on this side, you can play the drag game. I'm going to make that 2 millimeters. And on this side, I'm going to make that 4 millimeters. 5. Well, I could do that all the way through and then just extrude it out. But I think this will make my life easier when I put the end cap on, right? So now I have that popping out once, and this is what I mean. There's not one way to do this. You could do this so many different ways. I'm going to use project geometry after a sketch is created on the back of this, and then I'm just going to extrude this out, right? I'm just going to say, hey, I want this piece and this piece to be extruded out so that that cap is all filled in, right? That way I could actually put my axle inside of it, right? If I move that over, that looks like it's lined up, so that's great. Turn my axle off. Now all I need to do is rename, add properties, and I am done. Front tire. Head over to physical materials. If I look at the drawing, it's going to say ABS, so I believe that's in my favorite, so I'm just going to use ABS plastic. We could make it look perfect and paint it black if you would like, but the properties are going to be consistent right now, which is 3.6, which is absolutely fantastic. Take your screenshots and you're good to move on. Hopefully this video helped, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you learn.